What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Sorry it's been a while since I made a video. It's just sometimes you get in that drought and it's just like don't feel like making videos, and didn't really have anything to talk about. But today I had an idea. Actually I've been planning on this for a while, but we're going to talk about my favorite gaming blind buys. Now what do I mean by this? Blind buys. Nowadays it's very hard to do blind buys because you either hear from it from somebody, you hear about the game from social networking, YouTube, stuff like that, or you hear it from a friend or you see it on a commercial. Back in the day, you had gaming magazines and word of mouth, and that was about it. Other than that, you looked on the back of the box and seen that, hey, this looks pretty cool, I'm going to buy it based on the box art, or blind buy it. So that's what I mean by this. Some of these actually I bought within the last decade, when the internet was pretty prevalent and it was still around. It was getting more notoriety, and it was easier to find games based on that. But I still blind bought them because you can't find out about everything. Now I do appreciate tons of games I found out about through YouTube and my gaming buddies on the internet and everything like that, and from friends, because other than that, you know, I wouldn't be able to find out about a whole bunch of games that I have back here, and I wouldn't have been able to experience a lot of these games if it wasn't for you guys. So, you know, just some examples I'm gonna throw out there. Let's see. Binary Domain I found out from some people online, which is an amazing game, by the way. I love it. Shoot, Mirror's Edge, just to name a few. You know, those are all amazing games that I probably wouldn't have found out because a lot of, you know, Mirror's Edge didn't sell well, and you know, it wasn't very promoted heavily, so you have to rely on your buddies on YouTube and things like that in order to hear about these games. But these games right here are my favorite gaming blind buys that ended up really well, that I didn't hear about on social networking or nothing. I just looked at the box, decided to buy it. Now I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, oh, I found out about Final Fantasy, I knew it before anybody else. I'm not going to say that because it's not true. There is one or two higher known games here that I actually did blind buy. I'm not bullshitting, it's actually true. So let's get started. The first game is The Suffering. This is a survival horror third-person shooter. Now, I forget where I bought this, but I looked on the back and it looks like a Silent Hill 2 third-person shooter game. And I'm just going to try to show some pictures there. It looks like Silent Hill enemies with like weird nails coming out of their heads and stuff like that, and third-person shooter mixed together. That was all I needed to sell me on this game. I don't know where I bought it. I think it was at a play-in trade or something like that, but it was like 10 bucks, so I went home and played it, and this game is awesome. It's such a criminally underrated and looked over survival horror game. Nobody talks about this. You know, it's all about the Resident Evils and Silent Hills and like stuff like that, but this is excellent game. I do have The Ties That Bind. This is the sequel that actually came out. I have not played this yet. I've been meaning to, but the basic premise, from what I can remember, I haven't played this in a very long time. The guy is in jail, the main character, and he's on death row, and I guess he's going to the electric chair or something like that. He's getting put to death. You know, he's serving his sentence and this is his final day. So, and as this is happening, I think all kinds of weird shit just happens all of a sudden. He's about to get put in the electric chair, or about to, I can't remember if he's put in the electric chair or not, but he's about to be killed, and just like the lights go out and all this weird shit starts happening, monsters start appearing, demons, and they kill all the guards, and you basically get to break out of prison. And you know, there's nobody stopping you, the guards aren't there other than the demons. Now you do have to kill them, and you're able to find weapons and everything to kill these enemies, and it just becomes such a badass, awesome game. Very freaky, very scary, such a criminally underrated game, The Suffering. If you find this or are curious about playing it and you like survival horror, give it a shot. It's a solid third-person shooter, and it's an excellent survival horror game. So give this a shot, The Suffering. For the PS2, it's also available on Xbox, and I think that's it. Okay. Here is another one. Now this is a well-known series, but back in the day, it wasn't as well-known here in America. Well, I don't think it was. It's not as popular as it is today. Okay, so I went into a Sam Goody, I believe it was. Sam Goody was going out of business, of course, here where I live, and it was in the mall. And I remember they had games for $5, used games. No, they weren't even used. Sorry, it was $5 for these discount games. And I remember they had 2 games that I never heard of, and I was into RPGs at the time, so I was like, hey, I'm gonna pick up both of these based on a blind buy. I haven't heard anything about them. One of the games, this is not my blind buy game, but one of them was Sudeki for the Xbox. Now it looked pretty cool. I think it's like a hack and slash RPG. I played like half an hour of this, not that great. So I put in my other game that I bought for the GameCube, and I blind bought this based on the anime cover art alone, and I was pleasantly surprised. And that game is still Symphonia for the GameCube. Such an excellent game. Man, for a blind buy, this was a hell of a game and a hell of a buy. For $5 you get 80 plus hours of gameplay on 2 discs. Man, I remember I was in between moving in my houses, and I would play this just you know, when I was tired and done because I was working also at the time. You know, just to relax, I would play this game, and it lasted me from one house to another. I was still playing the game because it was so long. But I love the characters in it. You know, I believe there's 8 characters in here. I believe there's 8. You think it would be too much, but it reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy IX, where you had 8 characters. It wasn't too much to handle at once, and I love the banter between your characters as you're like traveling the world. Every now and then they'll stop and they'll have a little conversation with each other, and it's really witty and funny. Really loved it. I loved each and every character. Sheena was my favorite, the little samurai looking chick here, or ninja, whatever she was. I just really liked her. There were a few characters that I didn't care too much for, but other than that, the game is just excellent. It's an excellent action RPG with anime characters. Just everything about this game is so great. You know, I have a couple of the newer Tales games. Tales of Vesperia, I started playing a little bit, but I have not finished it. This is the only real Tales game that I've actually finished and played all the way through. And it's one of my favorite GameCube games. If you want to watch my old, really old, top 10 GameCube game list, that's on there. And it's one of my favorite RPGs that I've ever played. So that's a great blind buy. I'm sure a lot of people are aware of it by now. But they've also released this on the new Tales Symphonia Chronicles for the PS3 that just came out not too long ago. Have not popped that in yet. But there's also a sequel, Dawn of the New World, that's also on the Nintendo Wii, and it's also on this collection. Have not played that yet, and I'm not sure if it's any good, so... But I love Symphonia, and I really need to play some of the other Tales of games. Okay, moving along. There's a bunch of stories with a lot of these games, so kind of just go with it. Back in probably the early 2000s, I was really into RPGs on the Super Nintendo. I was really collecting for the Super Nintendo. I had a retro game store I lived right behind it, so I would go there like daily just to see what they had. And I was really interested in anything RPGs. Now back in the early 2000s, I really didn't have the internet yet. You know, and what I did have was dial-up, and I just didn't know that there was gaming websites that were available out there to find anything out. So I had to go with word of mouth and all that, you know, like I was saying, word of mouth from friends and from people like that. So I went to a game store and I seen, you know, they'd have all the Super Nintendo RPGs in the case, and I was like, just looking, you know, I knew of the name of Final Fantasy and all that stuff, but there was one name that I seen that I was not familiar with, and the cover art looked very interesting. It just looked like trees and grass and green. So it was $40. I remember this vividly. You know, RPGs weren't as expensive back then. But I bought Secret of Mana at my local retro store. And something about the cover art just interested me, because it wasn't like normal cover art, you know, where there's a main character, some action scene going on or anything like that. It was green, lush forests, jungles, whatever you want to call it. And the characters are very small here. They're not the main focus. So I bought the game, went home and played it, and I was pleasantly surprised. I'd never played anything like it. You control 3 characters at once. It's an action RPG kind of a deal. I know there was other ones that came out in Japan that didn't make it here. I was pleasantly surprised, and I remember going to my grandmother's house in Oregon, visiting there for a while, and before I was going to bed, or if my parents were visiting with my grandparents and my other family, I would go in there and play Secret of Mana and try to beat this, along with Final Fantasy II that I played on the Super Nintendo. And I just had so much fun just exploring it. No internet help whatsoever, of course. No strategy guides, you know, nothing like that. Just going through and exploring myself, and I actually beat that game at my aunt's house while I was on vacation. I remember the big dragon at the end, and just trying to figure out what to do and what his weaknesses were, and going with my gut, and end up beating the game there. So I remember vividly playing this game, and I really enjoyed it. Great RPG for the Super Nintendo. If you haven't played it yet, go check it out. And my last game that I have here, another RPG that I just bought on a whim because I seen it at my local game store, and it was Super Nintendo RPG. And again, this was, I believe, $40 loose. And I bought this probably in 2000 or 2001 maybe. And that is Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. Really enjoyed this game. It's your standard kind of 4-person party battle turn-based RPG, similar to a Final Fantasy. The enemy portraits are on the screen as you're fighting them. They're not too animated, kind of like an old Phantasy Star game maybe, or Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, when they're kind of just standing there. You know, they're moving around a little bit. If you hit them, they kind of shake, and you know, it's kind of like that. It's not too animated. The music is fantastic in this game. You know, great 16-bit RPG music, and I just really enjoyed it. It's not a fantastic RPG in comparison to like Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy IV, in my opinion, but it is still really good as an alternative to the, you know, mainstream Final Fantasy RPGs on the Super Nintendo, and I just really enjoyed it. If you're looking for something different on the Super Nintendo that isn't your typical RPG mainstay like Final Fantasy or whatever, give this a shot. It's really good. I also would recommend the second Lufia 2 in the, what is it? I forget what it's called. Lufia 2, but I have started that. I have not completed it, sadly. The game is it's pretty rare and pretty expensive, but if you do happen to find it, give it a shot. It is superior in just about every way to the first Lufia. Graphics look way better. The music is amazing. YouTube Lufia 2 music just right now. Just go do that, and hopefully that'll sell you on Lufia 2 by itself. But anyway, the game is amazing. It even introduces some early Pokemon elements in which you can recruit monsters to help fight for you. That's in the second Lufia. But Lufia 1 is still a very excellent game, and I do recommend playing through this first, because you don't want to go from the better to the worse Lufia, in my opinion. So those are a couple games that are my favorite gaming blind buys. Had no knowledge of anything before buying these games other than the cover art. So let me know what you guys' favorite gaming blind buys are, and leave a video response. I guess I don't even know if you can do that anymore, but make a video yourself. Favorite gaming blind buys, let me know, and then let me know what you guys thought of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.